till we finish building the structure through here, and what that's for is for a whole lot of things, but one of the things is to hold the rear of the cab in place, and it's going to get spot welded on all the way around here. Now the reason why this is asymmetric is this panel here is flat, and on the flat panel will be bulkhead connectors for brake lines, and also for our handbrake cables will come out through here. So we built a flat panel, drilled a whole lot of holes in it for the plug welds, and it's now ready to fit. So we'll plug weld all the way down through here and around, and we'll also plug weld down from the top. And this piece of channel here is doing multiple things. It's holding this panel in place. It's also, the fuel tank's going to sit underneath here, and the piece of channel will stop the fuel tank from lifting. And also the bed is going to sit on top of here, so it'll hold the bed. So it's a nice, solid, decent part of the chassis. If you look on the inside, so this rear bulkhead is where we're going to put all the body control modules and the fuse box to run everything. And so we've got two 16-channel PDMs, and we're going to mount one there and one there, and then we're going to 3D print a fuse box, which is pretty much going to be the same size as that. And it won't be a huge fuse box. What it's for is to run the really high amperage stuff that the PDMs can't run. So, for example, the electric hydraulic power steering. So the main battery cable will come from the back of the truck through this bit of solid steel here, and then it'll come up to the fuse box to a 200 amp fuse, and then there'll be probably 6 or 7 quite high amperage fuses running, as I said, the systems that the PDMs can't run. So all the wiring will be pretty much on this rear bulkhead, and when the upholstery gets put in, there'll be a panel that comes from here straight down onto here, and that'll be removable, so you won't see any of it. Okay, so we just finished welding in this bottom bulkhead. We won't really talk about it too much because we've shown you guys before, but effectively we plug welded it all in and mounted these brackets here for all our power distribution boards. So we're just getting ready to start our next project, which is going to be the roof chop. But the other thing we haven't shown you guys is the suicide doors. So what we've done is we've managed to get some, they're actually C1 Corvette hinges, and we've built a complete new frame inside the back of it, and built a whole lot of structure inside the door, and now they're open and closed like the sills do. So that's the open and close. Now in the last video we mentioned that we took the drip rail off, so you can see once they're gapped properly it's going to be a pretty cool gap all the way around. We're aiming for about a 3mm gap around everywhere. The biggest thing we've done to these doors is we've actually pie cut them. So this line that comes through here on the original truck actually comes up and meets this line here. And then this line here on the original truck just kind of finishes up in space. So it just looked, well, crap would be the best description of it. So yeah, we pie cut the door, and hence it looks, remarkably better. We're going to use the original Bedford door handle because it was quite a wooden probably describe it as Art Deco, but it was a pretty cool looking door handle. So we're going to use that door handle reversed onto here, just get it re-chromed. And one of the main reasons for taking on the roof as the next project is we really need to get these doors built. We need to get the glass made, all the mechanisms winding up and down inside, all the door locks and latches and catches working. And we really can't do that until we've got the frame finalised. So that's the rationale behind taking on the roof as the next project. Yeah, so this is the bottom part of the firewall all finished off, and we've plug welded it and then just given it a bit of a grind up. So that's pretty much finished. So the next step on this is fairly easy. Is scribe these into place, cut them really well, and just simply weld them in. And these will get spot welded on here as we talked about last week. And then I'll roll this edge over to make it look good and keep the water out. So there's not a lot more work in this, so that's the reason why we're starting to look at what the next project is, which is going to be the roof. If you look up here on the roof area, we're going to do a roof job on it, but when we look at this roof quite carefully, the roof itself is basically a write-off. It's got a lot of accident damage here where they've possibly dropped something on it in the past and then done a really crappy repair. But when you look closely also at this area of the roof, it is so pitted, it virtually goes all the way through. So to try and panel beat it back into shape and then effectively use it is going to give us a pretty poor quality finish. So this is coming off. And we'll show you the Dino Roof. Okay. Yeah, so we've got ourselves a Dino Roof, and it's absolutely not in perfect condition, but what the roof skin is not rusty. And there's, from what we can tell, no bog in it either. So what our plan is to take it apart at the split welds and end up with just the actual shell. And then we can go ahead and do some panel bedding on it. Let's come around the back here and have a look. It's got a fair bit of damage. It's got a lot of dents, just small dents, and a little bit slightly bigger dents all the way through here. And it seems to be something that Bedford trucks just seem to naturally get, and it's most likely because people load them up with 4x2 and big bits of timber and stuff and end up dropping them or resting them on the roof. So we spent months trying to find a roof that wasn't damaged, and this was the very best of what we could find. So the advantage of taking the roof skin off is that we can actually get behind here with a dolly and do a nice proper repair. And the reason is, if we'll roll it up the other way, I'll do that now. So if you look on the inside, there's a double skin in here. So there's no actual way of getting into the back of this to hammer and dolly this thing out properly. So hence us taking the skin off. So the other main advantage with using this roof skin is that we can keep it in very, very good condition when we're cutting it off. So we can go through and drill the spot welds out from this side, and we can grind it and chisel it out from the parts of the donor parts that we don't want anymore, which means we can keep the roof skin, hopefully, in basically perfect condition. And the same applies for the actual truck itself, is that because we don't want the roof anymore, we can make a mess of it and drill through it and hack it up in order to remove it. So we don't, and we can do it carefully so we don't damage any of the actual parts of the truck we want to keep. Yeah, so we're just stripping the chassis of just things like the jigs and stuff, and then we're going to roll it over on the side, and then we're going to fit the floor, which with a little bit of luck is just going to seamlessly sit in place. And these jigs off.
Yeah.
And then we're just having a quick walk around the car to make sure there's nothing else that we need to remove. because that fits like perfectly. What we'll do is we'll just put some screws in the corners, and then we'll rotate it, and we'll just show the finished carbon tunnel and what's happening underneath. Finished carbon tunnel. So if you do a quick look at that. What we're doing is we're everything. So this is one of the X pipes with the cats on it, and the way it's going to get finished is that these will obviously be polished, and they'll sit in the car and look like that. So when you look under the car, this will be a racted finish, and from that line down will be clear finish carbon, and then this will be polished stainless exhaust. And hidden up underneath that is the torque tube. So this carbon floor will get trimmed to the shape of the inner guard once we built the inner guard, so it won't be in the way of the suspension. We made it too big with the intention of actually trimming it. So we'll trim it to follow this chassis line here, and then it will come in, run along here, and then run back out, and then run into the bottom. Done a trial fit, pre-fit of our carbon body on the steel chassis, and we also fitted the carbon floor pan. So if you'd like. What our plan is to use, this is number 2 car, we're going to use number 2 car to build moulds and frames and plugs that we haven't finished yet. So for example, we've built a mould last week for the carbon panels which go in as the rear firewall, and then we built 4 of these, so 2 per car, 1 per side, and that gets laminated in. Effectively it gets bonded to the steel chassis the same way as you'd bond an aluminium panel on, or you'd bond and rivet an aluminium panel on. We're just bonding this panel on, and that will get cut to fit. And once this body's in exactly the right place and mounted properly, this one will get cut and we'll scribe it into place so it'll sit really, really nicely. So the next panels we're building on this car are the panels that cover the area behind the back of the seat belts. In New Zealand we have a very, very strict set of rules and regulations in regard to putting these cars on the road, and there's 2 things that we have to have that a lot of countries don't insist on, and we have to have seat belts that are diagonal lap belts, and or we also have to have headrests. There are ways around it. For example, if we didn't have these roll hoops, we wouldn't technically need a headrest. And if we had 4-point harnesses, we wouldn't need these normal diagonal lap belts. But putting a 4-point harness into a car that is effectively going to be used as an everyday driver or road car, show car, and never used as an actual race car. It just doesn't make sense. So we've gone for a normal diagonal 3-point belt. In these cars, the original cars have a piece of chrome that comes around here. Now we're going to utilise that. It's going to be exactly as standard. The original car has a piece of chrome that fits around here, and we're going to make our own part, and it's also going to be shaped around the roll hoop itself. So it'll look really nice because the chrome, the roll hoop will simply come out of that piece of chrome. The other thing we're doing with the chrome is we're having a slot in the chrome, and the seat belt itself is going to come out of the chrome, so it's going to sit there and come out and run over the brass and chrome. Next week, or at present, we're getting some bumpers 3D printed, just in PLA, as a mock-up to work out what we're going to use as a final bumper. What we have worked out though is that these original style mounts are not going to work for us. So this next few days coming up, the plan will be to cut these out and then effectively just build a little mould behind the back of them and re-laminate the carbon in these 4 areas so they basically just completely disappear. And that'll allow us to build a bumper that, you know, has a 2 or 3 mil gap perfectly around the shape of the car itself. That's the plan for the next few days, is finish those, and if we do get a little bit of time, the next task is to cut this area here out, and we've got a number plate frame, I guess carbon frame that we built, or box that we're going to insert in here. This is car number 1, which we haven't, I don't think, shown you guys at all, and we'll pull it out in the next video outside and walk you through where we're at with it. It's a little bit further ahead than the other car. It's got the whole chassis painted, top coat, and the body and the floor pan actually bonded to the chassis. The original car had a number plate frame effectively that sat out quite a long way, and we just didn't like it. So what we've done is we've recessed the whole frame inboard, and that's going to allow us to have number plate lights that are completely hidden up under here, and also an electric push button for the boot release as well. So it pretty much tidies up the whole back of the car. We're not going to have a boot lock or no visual number plate lights. Well, cutting that out and inserting that part that we just showed you before is probably the final thing we're going to do in the next few days. And I guess the next car to talk about is the progress we've made on the Oldsmobile. Now we've cut the old structure out, we've got the donor car part here, new condition. It's perfect. So we simply need to spot weld the new part straight in. Okay, so this morning Hunter's been suffering through sandblasting all of this area here, and it's 95% really good. There's no issues with it, but there's the odd spot where the rust is actually fairly pitted and deep, so we're going to... Yeah, it's a little bit too pitted and a bit too deep here, so we're going to cut it out, weld a new piece in. And once it's all repaired, we will then epoxy paint the whole thing, and at that point we can put on the part we showed you guys yesterday, which is the donor part. So we'll then at that point we'll drill holes through the sheet metal pretty much exactly where the spot welds were originally, and then we'll clamp it in position pretty much there, and we'll plug weld it all in with, or utilising exactly the same locations as the original spot welds. Look underneath it a bit. We finished all the epoxy paint in here. What we ran out of time with last week was sandblasting this area here, so that's one of the jobs in the next few days as well, is give that a quick sandblast, epoxy paint all through here. And all this has been weld through primed, all ready to accept the sill which we're building. What we've done today is we've gone through and cut all the bits of the sill off which were rusty, which was pretty much the whole thing. We'll go and grab it. This is the right hand sill, and when you look at it from the outside it doesn't really look that rusty, but once you look inside it, it's pretty much a total wreck. Even trying to sandblast this, it would just be so pitted and weak. We just pretty much made the decision to replace it. In here, there's a double structure, so there's two of these panels, one here and one behind it. And when we cut the sill off, this secondary structure in behind here was completely rusted all the way through on that sill area as well. So again, the donor car to the rescue. We literally just unstitched it at all the spot welds, and we've ended up with a part that is pretty much as good as new. We have used this end from the original car though, so because it was just a lot better. Yet again, the donor car to the rescue again. This is a sill section from the donor car, and whilst it's got a little bit of surface rust under where it was acid dipped or spot welded all together, we can remove all that, we'll sandblast that, and it's completely cosmetic. It's very, very, very thin rust. So this is the part that we will use to weld back into the car.